Learning a new language is tough for everybody, but what you might not realize is that different generations learn languages in very different ways. See, if you are a boomer, you're going to approach language learning in a totally different way to Gen Z, and you probably don't have a clue about how they actually go about it. This means you've got something to learn. So in this video, I'm going to show you how 4 different generations take on language learning, who does it best, and what you can steal from them to boost your own progress.
Serve una besadana. É Silva. Servo ona besa lafa gesto por te istra patempri.
What is going on? Well, he's just speaking Portuguese backwards. It's no big deal. Anyone have a grandpa like this? And he speaks 12 languages. So the baby boomers grew up with traditional language learning at school, and the internet did not even exist. I mean, home computers didn't even exist. Schools often focused on European languages like French, German, or Spanish, maybe Latin. It was mostly from a book, a textbook in a classroom. Grammar was the main focus, and getting a chance for language immersion, well, that really wasn't a thing unless your parents liked to travel.
Ça serait mieux d'apprendre d'abord le portugais et après ou le français ou l'espagnol.
Learn Portuguese first if you're doing Romance languages. I can't say I've heard that before, but it's very interesting. And here's the thing about older learners. They know a thing or two about patience and discipline.
I'm just kind of curious about all this technology and how we can make, video casts so easily. So this is a trial. I'm sitting far away from my computer. I'm not quite sure how it's all going to work out.
I love it. The boomers, well, they've been around the block. They've got life experience. They've got good study habits and usually a clear reason to learn too. Steve Kaufman is a perfect example.
Возраст не имеет значения. Я начинал учить русский язык, когда у меня было 60 лет.
Now, Steve didn't even start learning languages seriously until his 40s, and now he speaks over 20 languages, which is crazy, right? When he first got into languages, he was all about grammar books and structure, pretty old school. But then,
if I could just nail the declension tables, I'd be able to speak. Didn't turn out to be the case. So when I read things like, if we don't have grammar instruction, we won't be able to speak. I mean, all languages existed long before anyone wrote down a grammar.
Yeah, so he changed to a method based on reading and listening to native content, things like books and podcasts, but specifically reading and listening to stuff that he enjoys, interesting content, without worrying too much about grammar drills or even speaking at first.
Far better to spend 6 months getting used to a language, doing a lot of listening, do a lot of reading, accumulate vocabulary, and then, as you're ready for it, start speaking.
It's called input-based learning, and it's clearly working. I mean, 20 languages, look at that. But he had to figure that out over time.
When I learn, I just do pleasant things, because the more pleasant the association I have with the language, the better I learn. So I listen, I read. I've even developed a system for learning words and phrases and for associating pleasant thoughts and pleasing contexts with those words and phrases.
And so you have to expose yourself to so much of the language that certain forms become normal, habitual forms for you. And it doesn't come from reading grammar rules.
Yeah, he's all about good habits. Habits. It's so important. And remember the old guy who speaks languages backwards? Well, if you want to win like a boomer, the secret is don't treat language learning like a chore. Make it your favorite fun hobby and only bother with content that you actually love. My name is Olly Richards, by the way. I'm a language learner myself. So believe me, I know that the struggle is real. And if you're wondering what generation I fit into, well, pay attention and you might catch it. Now let's talk about Gen X. They might be a bit more strategic about language learning.
Michael è un regista con cui io volevo lavorare da sempre.
Why does Colin Firth speak Italian? Well, it was all for his Italian wife. So Gen X had more chances to learn foreign languages in school, but it was still mostly the traditional ones. And at home, they were often left to fend for themselves. So they grew up pretty independent and goal-oriented. If you were lucky, your parents bought a computer. For learning languages, right? No, silly, for playing Oregon Trail. Then one day, the internet existed. What was this new thing? Suddenly, learning a language got important for careers and travel and meeting new people. Gen X pioneered the use of tech and making mixtapes, and they often choose blended methods in languages. So I guess they are the remix masters. I heard this funny thing in a Babbel report. Gen X are to blame for spreading the word dude. Hey, dude. And yet, they're the most likely to skip the slang and use the standard version of any language.
Talk about what you're going to do in your summer holidays, then talk about what you're going to do in your winter holidays, and change the roles around so that you're using vocabulary from all parts of the book.
Such a humble guy, but he's an absolute language guru.
Mi sembra così di aver imparato più velocemente, ad esempio, l'italiano dopo il francese e spagnolo, e poi anche con il portoghese la stessa cosa.
Now, Richard swears by the little and often approach, and unlike a lot of people that I know, he enjoys going to language classes when he can because he's a little bit of a social animal and the classes inspire him. And believe me, Richard is highly disciplined. He's known for his routine and getting to know the core of a language first.
But the vocabulary is the meat, is the flesh of the language. And without the vocabulary, your grammar can't really do very much except explain the grammar.
Using the language out in the real world, before he goes into any new situation, he will learn a list of words just for that situation, so he has the words available to know what to say. But here's the thing, as he's gotten older, like even the best of us do, he's focused more on quality over quantity. He's patient, he's learned to go deeper into a few languages instead of spreading himself too thin. Mind you.
But my daily life consists of 5 home languages. Mm-hmm. So with my wife and I speak Macedonian. With my daughter I speak French. And then we do homework in English. And then we speak German and Spanish every day for about half an hour a day of playtime and normal activities.
Don't let this scare you. He's just making it personal. You can do this with only one language, totally fine, and you can just talk to yourself. Here's an idea. Make a rule at home that every time you look in the mirror, you're only allowed to speak to yourself in the language that you're learning. My friend Luca made it really personal too, and he's one of the best language learners out there.
I think that I learn languages because I see languages as a tool and a means to be the better version of myself every day. But I think that language learning has changed me as a person, as a citizen of the world. I see all these barriers that we have of misunderstandings among countries, of cultural differences. I truly believe that when you speak a lot of languages become bridges. They're not barriers anymore.
And Luca started really young, before any of the fancy apps and tech existed. His grandmother got hold of him.
I was a 12-year-old boy, and she said, why don't you come here and let's do some Latin, let's do some French. And that kind of started the whole thing. She told me, if you learn this stuff now and you learn how to learn, then you're going to have a great life.
Now Luca has a really interesting method of his own called bidirectional translation, where you translate texts from the target language into your own language and then back into the target language, kind of, back and forth like that, which is interesting because one polyglot president from the 1800s used the exact same trick. And Luca also happens to believe in taking notes the old pen and paper way. Remember that, pen and paper? And science agrees, because writing things down, not typing or sticking stuff into your phone, makes things stick like glue in the old memory. Okay, so what is the magic of older learners? Older, I mean, you know what I mean, right? I'm seeing a strong sense of purpose. They've got discipline. They can draw from old skills and knowledge. It's about fulfilling lifelong goals, traveling, family, ticking off the bucket list. But my favorite advantage that life experience brings is it chills you out.
Hola, buenas tardes, clase. ¿Cómo estamos?
Bien, Señor McIntosh.
Bien, Señor McIntosh. Come on, más energía, right?
Seriously, the older you get, the less you care what anyone else thinks, and you just do what you want to do for yourself.
Is do it with dialogues like this. And you don't have to look it up first. You don't have to do none of that. Just play it and listen to it over and over and over while you're doing dishes, while you're mowing the lawn, while you're in your car driving. You know, passive listening. You don't have to really be doing anything.
So here's where things get interesting. Millennials, they were the first to grow up with the internet, which gave them tons of exposure to different languages and cultures. They are more tech savvy, they're kind of tech native, and they're great at using all the different tools. And honestly, they've embraced a wide range of learning styles. It's kind of a hallmark of millennial learners, actually. They've grown up with social media and a connected world, so they are well aware that languages can open doors to new job opportunities, new whatever, help them network around the world and have tons of fun discovering new cultures. Real linguistic multitaskers.
글쎄, 처음에는 문법이 되게 어려웠는데 그 발음도 어려웠는데.
Lindy is a millennial who went from shy teenager to fearless speaker. She's mastered languages like Korean, Japanese, and French, but her approach is a little bit different. She uses language apps like Memrise to create a structured learning routine and focuses on visual learning tools. She breaks things down into small, manageable goals, nice little easy step-by-step habits to follow. I guess she's onto something here because she tackles a lot of languages all at once. But that's the cool thing. Millennials have the advantage of flexibility. A darker side, though, is that millennials also grew up in this world of social media, which, let's be real, brings a little bit of anxiety with it. You know, that whole thing about being afraid of other people's reactions? Yeah, it spills into language learning too, and they might hesitate to speak in case they mess up. Even huge language stars like Xiaoma struggled with this.
I think that I could have gotten so much more mileage by, like, I was spending literally hours on Anki per day. Huge waste of time.
So you go all the way to China and then sit doing Anki whilst you're
right. Why? Dude, no. You gotta just spend your time, like, speaking with as many people as possible.
If you don't know him, he's really good at Mandarin Chinese. On the flip side, though, millennials are super comfortable with self-promotion. They're not shy about sharing their progress, and they've embraced multiculturalism in a big way. Lindy even does her everyday routines in different languages. She prays in Afrikaans, she uses her phone in Japanese, and so on. And something else I really love is that she actually used language learning to overcome serious anxiety. Probably not something that the boomers knew was even an option.
結構おしゃれな場所ですね。後ろにある絵。はい、そうですか。結構昔のアートですけど、南アフリカ人の。
So if you're a millennial at heart, use the tech, use the content that you love. Don't get too hung up on one method, and don't be afraid to dive in deep. Your generation was practically born for this. If you set weekly goals with a tracking app and join a language platform for communicating with people, you are going to shine.
Eu vejo isso também aqui, porque na semana passada eu fui para os Estados Unidos. E lá também as pessoas são muito mais abertas do que as pessoas aqui. São. Muito mais.
So this Olly guy then, he speaks 8 languages and he has dabbled in quite a few others beyond that, and he has definitely noticed a difference since when he started out. Don't you just love the third person? But seriously, I was pretty young when I started language learning. I was just 19. I was very keen and eager to explore the world. My first language was French. I actually went to live in Paris for 6 months. I had no money. I was sleeping in youth hostels, working the night shift in youth hostels. I mean, it was kind of crazy. But I had this eagerness to just talk with people, to communicate, and it was that willingness to just put myself out there and speak with people, look for opportunities to speak, like language exchanges, that really helped me get to grips with the language. And that first language I learned gave me the confidence to know, hey, I can learn another language. And so when I left Paris and I went back to the UK, and then subsequently went to live in many different countries around the world, Brazil, Argentina, Japan, Qatar, Egypt, I had that confidence that came from that early experience in Paris. As I've gotten older, though, what's happened is that I don't now no longer want to go and rough it in the streets of a new city and just speaking to people wherever I can. I prefer to learn in a way that's more conducive to real life. And so I've explored many different ways of learning languages over the years as life has changed. And the approach I use now is called the story learning method. It's an idea that I came up with after a pretty scary night, one of my early adventures in the mountains in the north of Argentina. It led me to actually master Spanish, which is why I decided to use that method to actually teach with. And the story learning method is designed to make language learning feel like a very natural process because it's all based on stories, which is how we learn our first language in the first place, right? So if you're someone who loves stories, if you enjoy reading, if you are not a big fan of rote memorization and things like that, well, you can use stories and the story learning method to keep learning fun. And it really is quite different to how other methods work. And if you're keen to see how the story learning method works, you can check out my free story learning kit. There's a QR code up here you can scan with your phone, or you can click the link in the description. There's lots of helpful things in there, like PDFs and video masterclasses, things like that to help you explore the method. Scan the code, click the link in the description, and let me know if it works for you. But did you know that about 60% of language learners in the US are under the age of 30. In fact, Duolingo reported the same for many countries around the world.
So I was 13. I decided that I wanted to learn Mandarin Chinese because we were going on a choir trip, a group of 30 boys and I. And I wanted to learn the language. I wanted to figure out if I could interact with the locals. And so I did.
Now, Gen Z, or Gen Z, as we would say here in the UK, which I have to point out, otherwise I'm going to get lambasted in the comments, are the true digital natives. Now, this generation grew up with smartphones and they've been plugged into the internet from day one. So when it comes to learning languages, they are used to using tech to their full advantage. YouTube, TikTok, Duolingo, they are following shows, gamers, creators from every country around the world and getting exposed to different cultures. Well, it's just part of normal life for them.
Yeah, after China, I went with Farsi because I had a friend in Arizona that was Iranian. And I remember going to birthday parties with him, like Tavalodet Mubarak. That's the happy birthday in Farsi. And
are you catching the awareness here?
I wanted to hear people that lived on completely different sides of the world, or even in Mexico, Guatemala, these countries that they're so rich in culture, in people, and I just wanted to be able to tell those stories to people with my YouTube channel.
Motivations have definitely changed, and you don't even have to have the luxury of travel. If you can't travel, well, maybe just follow a traveling YouTuber for now. There are tons of them speaking all the languages. I read on Duolingo's blog that Gen Z learners, Gen Z, what am I going to say? I'm going to stick with Gen Z for my American friends, are obsessed with languages like Japanese and Korean, often because of their love for pop culture, anime, K-drama, video games. Take Matt from Matt vs. Japan, for example.
Self-learning or? はい、そうです。そうです。そうそうそう。ちょっとペラペラですね、これ。いや、もう10年以上勉強してるから。どうやって？いや、まあこれこそ漫画読んだり、アニメ見たり、YouTube ドラマ、インプットですね。
Matt started his language learning journey in his teens and he's now fluent in Japanese. But here's the thing, he took it to an extreme that went beyond casual exposure. He went all in with immersion, anime, manga, podcasts. He just buried himself in Japanese day in, day out. Hundreds of hours of this until it became second nature. I mean, most people simply will not do this. I wouldn't do that. I couldn't do that. It's full on, input heavy, and frankly, I like doing other things with my life as well. But if your parents are still paying the bills and you've got 24 hours a day to do it, you can, and it will work, as Matt has proven. And anime is his thing, but obviously you can find your own thing. And I'd love to hear what that is. Let me know in the comments. But just like Lindy and Ari, Shalma, in the beginning, Matt's shyness stopped him from doing the talking thing.
I mean, the only real advice that I can give is just do it. Because, I mean, yeah, when I first started speaking Japanese to people in real life, I was nervous and I was experiencing anxiety. Even if you get embarrassed and the interaction doesn't go well, ultimately, you don't really have anything to lose. You're going to forget about it 10 minutes later and you're never going to see that person again. And so it doesn't really matter that much. And when the interaction does go well, then it can be a really awesome experience.
I completely agree. Just start talking. He also uses Anki. It's an app that helps you memorize words and phrases. It's like having flashcards, but way smarter. It spaces things out so that you remember them long term. I've used Anki or similar apps to that quite a bit over the years as well. I think it has a place. I found personally, as I've gotten older, I had less patience for staring at my phone to do absolutely anything. But methods like this do help. If you want to steal Matt's method, where you can watch one episode of a TV show every single day in your target language and challenge yourself to pick up a few new words and then put the words into Anki so that you can practice them. By the way, Gen Z are the most socially conscious gang that we've ever seen, and they're using their voices in huge ways.
The Earth Mother shares her wisdom through me to create a world that is united and free. Who am I? Who could I really be? Because if I find myself, I will be set free.
That kid is changing the world. If you're Gen Z, your edge is clear. You totally get why speaking more than one language is important. You take risks. You're less afraid of making embarrassing mistakes.
Un pain au chocolat.
Come on, we all know that the mistakes get posted to TikTok, and let's be honest, time is a luxury you probably still have.
I have gobbles of time. I can wake up and do nothing for an entire day because it's the weekend and I don't really have to pay bills.
By the way, not to blame science, but there is one small physical advantage that Gen Z have. Their brain plasticity is at its peak, and that just means their brains can absorb languages faster because they are super adaptable. It's like they're wired for learning. But is all this enough to give them the upper hand?
Well, first I want to dispel the notion that you have to be a genius to learn a lot of languages, and that people who know a lot of languages are geniuses. It's absolutely not true. All of us have that genius inside us. And all of us have the ability, provided the method is natural.
Bit of good wisdom right there from the boomers. Write that one down. So a quick recap then. Boomers, they take their time. They're slow and steady. They're learning for life goals like retiring on a beach in the south of France. Gen X found the sweet spot between old school methods and newer tech. Millennials are the goal setters, juggling multiple apps, tracking their progress. And Gen Z are fearless. They dive headfirst, binging on absolutely everything. Different methods, different motivations, and fun fact, these generations even prefer different languages. So now that we've leveled the playing field, there's one very important question left to ask. When it really comes down to it, who wins? Young or old? Who has the best method? Well, the answer, of course, is nobody, because it's not about age at all. It's about why you're doing it in the first place and whether you're using a strategy that's going to help you do it in a way that works for you. See, whether you're 20 or 70, you can master a new language. You can. There's no question here. Your brain is literally built for learning languages. And I've got news for you. You have the exact same secret weapon in your pocket as I do. Technology. You've got apps, podcasts, YouTube, online courses, even AI tutors. Young and old have access to incredible resources out there. Wait, AI tutors? Well, weirdly, yes, and check out these stats. It's hardly surprising that Gen Z uses AI the most, and boomers don't seem at all that keen, but trust me, they are catching on. So no matter your age, the key to mastering a language is in playing to your strengths and borrowing from others where appropriate. And in my book, whoever has the most fun and sticks with it, well, they are doing language learning the right way. Hold on, something new just in. Generation what?
I have been playing video games since I was 3. I would rather have an iPad better than a dog.
And just when you thought we had the answer, there is a wild card on the horizon. Generation Alpha. These kids have had AI tools, apps, and instant translation in their hands since they were babies. Tech is like breathing to them. They're visual learners, and rumor has it that they'll be the most multilingual generation yet. Who knows how they'll shake up the way that we learn. I'm just a little nervous about what they will teach us.
Don't be coming in here phantom taxing your neighbor's talkies. You want to be a true Giga Chad? You want to be a level 1000 mogger in the academic space? Be so for real and show your work, period.
But if you're ready to start learning a real language first, well, I've got 7 of the coolest languages that are so simple and easy that you could definitely be speaking confidently within just a few